Why do we read the Bible? Is it to follow words on a page? Or do we do it in the hope of uncovering something deeper within ourselves? Why don't we read anything for that matter? Stories, poems, or scriptures? Do we read them to escape or to learn and find truth? What is your purpose for seeking the spiritual? Is it to worship a figure from the past? Or to possibly awaken the divine goodness already living within you? Welcome to We've Heard It Said, where we will explore these questions to discover our divine nature and quite possibly the path to transformation. Well, top of the day to you. Welcome back to We've Heard It Said. And we had some pretty good questions there, and we're going to go over them and see what we can find. All right, so one of the first questions was, why are you reading the Bible? What's your purpose? And at least speaking for myself here, there have been a lot of times in my life where I was doing something and not getting the best results from whatever it was that I was doing. And not just I did this here, I did this there. Deep patterns and habits of behavior that I continued to do over and over and over again that were adding to the discord in my life. And yet I kept them. I was once speaking with my sister, and she was dealing with experiences in her life that caused her a significant amount of duress. And that's an interesting thing too, because oftentimes the things that for a lot of people, the things that cause them the greatest degrees of duress are the circumstances or experiences and relationships that they are having that they have quote unquote failed at in the past. It's this cycle that the cause and effect repeat. So you feel fear because you have not dealt with this circumstance in a way that you would have liked in the past. Yet, as a result of that fear, may behave in a way that isn't the most appropriate response for solving the problem. And why does that happen? I have some theories, and one of the theories is, there's a man named by the name of Dr. Bruce Lipton that once stated that 95% of the day, most human beings are not acting from an awareness of present consciousness, but rather working from a subconscious where they don't recognize that the subconscious mind is driving. They feel like they're doing the thinking, they feel like they're doing the driving, but their vehicle is on, I don't know why I said it like that, vehicle. Their vehicle is on, I used the word autonomous the other day, and I think you could say the subconscious is running. I used it incorrectly in a prior podcast. I think it was the last one, where I said we operate autonomously. Autonomy is kind of like a thing of meaning that you have that sovereignty and freedom of choice. And the way that I said it could have been kind of misinterpreted or just missaid, really. I think a better way that I could have said it was that the subconscious mind program is running autonomous from you. It's a rebel, right? And it's not following the rules, not being obedient to you, right? And oftentimes that's because a part of ourselves wants something, and then the subconscious program has a mixed message and habitual patterns saying to do the other. But anyways, so the interesting thing is when someone finds themselves in a difficult situation, that the ones that cause them the most duress are oftentimes the ones that they respond to in the poorest fashion, which causes a cycle, because when they are under that level of duress and fear, it can enact a subconscious response, which is a response or reaction instead of a response. I like to look at reactions as just basically repeating the same pattern response to me is bringing a solution to the situation that gives it the opportunity to evolve outside of itself. It's not like this cycle pattern. And so that it's just kind of this vicious cycle that can happen for a lot of people, where the situation itself causes fear, which causes them to act in a way that's not the best way to respond, because they're in a state of reaction. And so why does that happen? And I think it's because the way the body mind program, the human being program, is designed is phenomenal when it's in harmony, balance, alignment with its creator, and the created are in a sacred union, and we know what we want and all these things. It can work really, really well. But the same things that make it work really, really well are the same things that can actually cause it to react poorly. Because, in my opinion, when you find yourself, like if you were to go back in time, so we see humanity has evolved. We don't live in the same world that we once did. And this is why, when I've used the reference before, a lobster needs to shed its shell, right? So that it can grow into its new form. Like, it cannot keep its old shell. Its old shell, if it kept its old shell as it tried to grow, the shell would strangle it and kill it, and it would die. And the truth of yesterday can be the prison of tomorrow. And in my understanding, in Isaiah it says, God says, "Behold, I bring all things new. Do you see it? I'll make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert." And it's this understanding that the world, it's not like, in my opinion, just a big bang once a long time ago. That the process of creation is a interface through the now moment, but it's continuously expanding ad nauseum forever. And so as it continues to grow, that's partially why Jesus may have said, "Give no anxious thought for tomorrow. For all of your worry, you couldn't add a single inch to your stature." To paraphrase, for tomorrow the evil would be sufficient for its day. It's kind of like every day there will be an opportunity. Some people could see it as an obstacle, but it's an opportunity for growth and expansion and expression to become more than you were the day before, right? But anyways, so the human design, which is really cool, is so let's rewind. So you go back in time, and when to the animal nature of humanity, or its ancestors, if it were to be, if a bear, let's just, to simplify things, you have subconscious, conscious. Let's say conscious is the mindset that it's got its foot in the heavens and on earth. It's connected to the creator, which can bring in new information, while also simultaneously it has its foot on the ground, right? It's both. It's the Vesica Pisces. The Vesica Pisces is the two overlapping circles that form the famous Jesus fish, right, that you see on people's bumper stickers and things like that. And there's images and ancient architecture and drawings and paintings where it shows the Christ is in the center of that acknowledgement, right, in between heaven and earth. But anyways, but the subconscious mind is a set of patterns and routines which are designed to respond to stimuli lickety split. There's no need for it. It doesn't question very much, if at all, because its job is to respond, right? And so a good example would be if you're having a disagreement with your partner. It makes a lot of sense to have a foot in the heavens, the newness, right, to the creation aspect of self, and the foot on earth to listen to your spouse and talk to your spouse. You need to be receptive, both from the spouse and from the creator, so you can have that transformative growth mindset dialogue. So in that case, if you're husband or wife, because I'll just use the example of a wife. If my wife came over to me and was frustrated, there's really no need for me to enter into a fight, flight, or freeze response. She's not a bear that's trying to eat me, right? So in that situation, the most appropriate response is to, let me see if I can come up with 3 F's. Face it, feel what's going on, and then find a solution. Right? So it's very growth mindset oriented, and it's an awesome response in a loving relationship that you have with somebody else where there's some discord. Awesome. Let me face it. Let me feel what's going on here, and then let's see if we can find a resolution. But in order to do that, you have to be in a state of almost ungroundedness to a degree, right? You got to have your head in the clouds, foot on the ground, where because what's happening is there's discord because both parties believe something, and they came together, and those beliefs that both parties held caused that discord, right? And so if there's no open-mindedness in there, it can't resolve itself. It just can't. Both people would just be defending their position infinitely, right? So it's going to require some open-mindedness. Well, that open-mindedness is going to create an experience where it's in your best interest to question, to pause, to reflect, right? Face it, feel it, right? And then seek to find a solution, right? Awesome, right? But by human design, there are circumstances that we may face in our lives where it's not a spouse. It's a life or death situation. It could be an animal charging you, a dog just runs off its leash or something like that. Some crazy person at a football game. I don't know, something where you don't, sitting there and reflecting and being in this inquisitive, questioning state will get you killed, right? And we've entered into a time period, at least here where I live in America, where I'm not facing those situations because our society has evolved to a point where, for the most part, you can remove yourself from those types of situations most of the time, right? So if a bear came, I don't want to face it and feel it out with the bear and try to find a resolution that requires me listening to the bear and questioning the bear and trying to put myself in the bear's shoes. You know what I mean? That's not going to work there, right? And so what ends up happening in my understanding is that we have assigned a fear response to a lot of things that it's just not an appropriate categorization of the circumstance. And so the old animalistic nature is coming out in times when it's not really in the best interest for us to do, right? And so it's going to require, in many instances, letting go of the old understanding so that you can have the appropriate reaction in the future. And that takes practice and patience and very, very, very importantly, a good, solid understanding of our relationship with our Creator. Without it, you'll be in my opinion, you'll be imprisoned with your personality matrix. Jesus said, "Of my own self, I can do nothing, but through me, my Father can do all things." Right? Put off the old self and its deceitful desires and so on. There's a whole bunch of things about that, right? To me, it's not killing the ego. The ego is just Latin for I. I think that's a dangerous game. And, the guy who came up with that whole thing about killing your ego was just taking a bunch of psychedelics, man. And he got super high on a trip one time. And he's like, "I've dissolved my ego, man." It's like, no, you didn't. Your ego is now an identification with a man who dissolved his ego. You cannot, while you're in this form, escape it, and why would you want to? Right? It's not about killing, in my opinion, our ego, although, depending upon who you're talking to and what stage they're at, I can see value in interpreting it in that way. The way I express is, as I like to say often, with a holistically nuanced point of view, which isn't always the best approach, depending upon the stage where someone's at. It's like when I was a kid, I learned to ride a bike because my adopted father, it was actually brilliant, absolutely brilliant. He gave me my two-wheel bike for the first time, no training wheels. He took the pedals off and he brought me to this little hill, nothing crazy. And he said, when you can coast all the way down this hill without falling, then you can get your pedals. And so I did it, and I fell a good number of times. But it was a short period of time. It feels like a day. Maybe it was a couple days of practice or something. But then I just did it. I just coasted down, and then he gave me the pedals, and it was so easy. I never needed training wheels, And it's not because I was the best learner or anything as a kid. In fact, I learned in a very abstract way. I had a lot of difficulties with learning, but it worked really, really well for me. And so it's, meeting ourselves where we're at, meeting other people where they're at. But for the sake of this podcast, I imagine it's going to attract people that are interested in exploring things on a deeper level, which involves, which must involve kind of a holistically nuanced perspective where that's why Jesus, in my opinion, used parables. Because it's a certain type of thinking that's required for a parable to become valuable to you. It's the ability to take your present knowledge and personal experience and tie it to something that seems like it's abstract or not related, and find the relationships between those. And that's done from and for one who has a mindset that is in an expansive state that's constantly seeking to connect the dots. Right, rather than throwing the baby out with the bathwater, stuff like that. And we'll have a podcast on the throwing the baby out with the bathwater and what have you. But anyways, so let's see if I can get back to where I started with this. So my sister had a pattern that was repeating in her life, and I had asked her. I said, "Well, why don't you just let it go?" She got really frustrated with it. "What do you mean let it go? How do I let it go? What do you mean?" And here's why that was such a tricky thing. Your, in my opinion, subconscious, the program itself is working for you. It's a servant. It's when so it's not some evil ego that wants to just destroy you, right? Although there is the opportunity of an adversarial force that can make suggestions and temptations that can be led in a different direction, but that exists so that we have choice. I've talked about it in prior episodes if you want to listen to them. So anyways, when I had asked her to let it go, and she eventually let go of that pattern. And basically it was this: what did she need to change? Well, when you get to the principle of what drives your behavior and your reality, in my opinion, it is values and beliefs. So whatever it was, she had a particular set of values and beliefs that were at war with each other. They contradicted each other. And so the subconscious was playing off of it. And it gets really, really deep. And you can find it, and it's like they're like webs. And I asked, like, the way I find it is I've developed my relationship with our Creator in such a way that I can hear it more and more clearly. So I ask. Sometimes I get an answer right away. Sometimes it takes some time. But it's not like I just write it all down like I'm a super mathematician and figure it all out just logically. Really what I do is I ask. I acknowledge first I was weak, then I was strong, right? That's therefore I shall boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses. Like, this is what I think confession is God's, your Creator, is waiting as your salvation. By the way, the name Jesus was a translation into Greek from Yeshua or Joshua, which they just translated as Jesus. And then when they translated Jesus into English, then they got Jesus. There was not like name of Jesus, but Yeshua or Joshua, however you say it, is like God saves, salvation, and that's an important thing to me. So when I communicate with my Creator, that's what my Creator is. My Creator is my salvation, and because the Creator is omnipotent and omnipresent, in my opinion, it can be. We can channel in discordant energy into ourselves and expressed into our world as a result of a misunderstanding of our relationship to that divine source, wherein our beliefs themselves cause a restriction or a perversion of that energy, which could have been used for good to be used for bad, because our source is a source of all, right? And so to me, getting a really good understanding of that relationship with your source is really what the majority of this cast is about, is exploring this with you, the listener, and myself. I grow every episode. I listen to it afterwards, and I'm like, wow, okay, that's I guess the Spirit gave me some new information through the cast, and harnessing that. The same way as I would with anything, right? If you had a knife, right? When you see a knife, like let's say you got a bunch of cavemen, they're all around, like, ooh, go, go. So that knife, what are they going to do to be able to creatively use it in a way to influence their lives and make it more abundant? Well, what they're going to do is they're going to understand. They have to have a decent understanding of themselves. What do I mean by that? If you don't have a decent enough, you're a caveman, you see a knife for the first time that just randomly dropped there from aliens or something, but you see a knife or God dropped it there, right? So you see you're either these cavemen, you see a knife for the first time. Well, before you can even interact with that knife, you have to have at least a good enough understanding of yourself and your relationship to yourself before you can even decide to start manipulating or influencing the knife to work in your favor, right? So what do I mean by that? So you have to understand this is what you did as babies, right? You understood the relationship. You looked, and when thought frequencies went through you, you would see a finger move, right? Or you didn't know it was a finger, but you saw it, and then you started to realize when you had that thought again, it moved either the same or in a similar fashion, and then you started to acknowledge, when I think these things, the relationship I have to that appendage, that thing, is one that it responds to me. I am responsible for that. So you practice, and you did it at an accelerated rate, which could be why Jesus said, if you want to reach the kingdom, become like small children, right? There's a certain level of humility, of constant exploration that happens in children that I believe is closed off as people formulate what I consider to be an improper understanding of self, which severely limits the creative source potential that could be flowing through them. And not just them, like I'm saying this for myself too, right? This is what I've been working on internally. But anyways, so the baby, so those cavemen, before they can interact with the knife, have to have at least a good enough understanding of the relationship to themselves to be able to, quote unquote, handle with their hands the knife. So they have a relationship, they got to form a relationship with themselves. They have to understand their responsibility. They have to get their body to be subservient to them and obedient to them. And after some time, they become one with the body, and they're the boss. Now, the next step they have to do, and the babies do this with a ball, right? So the baby's like, oh, so now the baby's like, oh my God, I can move my hands and all that. Then it's like, it sees a ball. I want to influence that ball. How can I do it? And it learns to move, crawl, walk, pick it up. And it's like, I want to, this is what creators do, right? We're learning to create and you can do this even bigger in life, way beyond just a baby. That's in my opinion, right? Especially after being born again. So then now let's go back to the cavemen. So now you have the cavemen, and they have this knife, right? So when they're forming a relationship with the knife, that knife could be a valuable tool for them, super valuable, right? But when they first start handling it, and they might have to go through an experience of learning, of trial and error, right? Sin means to miss the mark, right? So miss the mark a couple times. They pick up the knife, they grab it by the blade, cuts them. They're like, oof, all right, don't grab it this way. And they grab it the other way, and maybe it doesn't cut them. And then they try to chop some wood with it, or, carve some cool decorations, whatever they're doing with it, right? So they had to get a relationship with themselves. Then they had to get a relationship with that knife. And they had to understand their responsibility and how their thoughts, because remember, all the actions stem from thoughts, how their thoughts affected their body, which then interacted with the knife, and how that knife interacted with them as a response to it, cause and effect relationships. So the same thing. So this is just a knife, and you've done it with everything, so many things in your life. We all have. Balls, silverware, your car, getting dressed, like eating, like literally everything. You're finding cause and effect relationships, and through trial and error, sometimes you can learn from someone else's errors and someone else's trials, and that's what I find a lot of value in the Bible, right? Sometimes you can learn from someone else's trials, or you got to learn from your own. You make a mistake, you sin, right? You missed the mark, and the goal is to acknowledge that and say, okay, I tried this, and this is the result that I got. But there's so much shame and things like that. Shame causes all sorts of fight, flight, and freeze response, which makes it even worse. It compounds it. But imagine you could look at your life and yourself and your character, your body as an instrument, and you make mistakes, and it makes a sound, and you're seeking to create a symphony of beautiful harmony, if that's what you want. So if you look at your life and your past, and to others this way too, as you've been learning to play the instrument of self, and if you picked up a violin for the first time and you started to play it and you go, it makes this crazy noise. It doesn't make much sense if you want to become a great composer to hate yourself or not be able to forgive yourself or be indebted to yourself. That was part, like, just look at it and say, okay, this, when I did that exact thing, it made that sound. Look at it with reason, right? And God can help with that, by the way. God does help with that. Look at it with reason. And so kind of soften that approach. Anyways, so one of the big focuses on this podcast is to use Scripture and my interpretation of it to stimulate the listener, you, if you so choose, so that you can form new understandings within yourself about your relationship to your source of being and your creator, and have a greater influence to bring in the good, the holy, and the beautiful in your life. That's what I'm seeking to do with my life, and that's what I would like to participate in spreading to anywhere I can. The same way as if someone found out there was like a like just a well with infinite water. It's like you want to go and be like, hey guys, there's a well. You can go get water from it. All the time. It's infinite. You can ask it anything. Seek and you shall find. Ask and the answer will be given. Knock and the door will be open. So if we can understand the importance that something as little and finite as a knife requires a complex understanding of cause and effect relationships between you and trillions, literally trillions of cells that make up your body, that knife, and the laws of this physical plane, for you to be able to utilize the knife in a satisfactory way. And if you have some misunderstandings of your relationship to your body, or misunderstandings of your relationship to that knife, you could literally kill yourself with it. This is a knife. A tiny little finite knife. The source of your being contains all power in the entire universe, and even more because it's infinite, and it's even power that has not yet been expressed. And it's, in my opinion, in the center of us. There's a parable where a man sold everything he had for a shiny pearl. To me, that pearl, he didn't sell everything he had just for the pearl so he could just go home and only have a pearl and be like Schmeagol. I was going to try to do a Schmeagol impression, but it probably sound... Hold on, let me try it. It almost came out as Yoda. Precious it is. I went to do Schmeagol and Yoda wanted to come out. So, it's not like you sell everything in your life just to get a pearl that you just sit in a cave. And it's like, my God, I love my God. My relationship to my creator is all I need. I'm just going to sit here and just stare at this pearl all day in a cave. I'm better than everybody else who cares about things of the world. No, not in my opinion. I think it was like, to me, my understanding of the parable is sell all that other stuff, because that pearl is like that well. When Jesus spoke, there's a parable where Jesus goes to speak to a Samaritan at a well, and he's talking about the water in the well, and she's thinking he's talking about like a water about thirst and the thirst being quenched. She thinks he's only talking about the water in the well, and he said, if you understood, paraphrase, the water that I give you, the understanding that he was sharing gives you, then you'll have access to an infinite spring of water. Something that, like, so you're trading off what you thought was valuable before for the pearl, which gives you, like with Job, twice what you had before. And not just hiding in a cave. That's what I kind of thought too. I was like, I just figure out how to love God and just kind of sit in a cave all day. And why would he create all of this if that was the case, right? So to me, if it's so important to have these complex understandings made so that you can touch something as finite and small as a knife without killing yourself, and even better yet, use it in a way that can actually help make your life more abundant, why on earth would it not be the same thing for your source of being, the infinite power within all and through all in the universe? And so that's my focus here. So my sister had said, how do I let this go? And so what we came to find out was she didn't let it go because she had a misunderstanding of what was valuable and what wasn't. She was hanging on to an old pattern because a part of her thought it was still valuable. And so the way that she was able to shed the old pattern was by trading it for something better. Right? So how do you trade an old pattern for something better? Well, as I said earlier, in my opinion, your subconscious is here to be your servant. It's here to serve you. Right? And I used a parable in a prior episode. I'll use it again, but I'll summarize it really short. Jesus said that the Son of Man sowed the good seed in his garden. An adversary came during the night and sowed tares. Tares mimic wheat, the good seed, but and they look like it at first, but by harvest time you can tell. And they said, should you pull up the wheat now? Should you pull up the tares now? And the farmer says, no. If you try to pull up the tares now, you'll pull up the good wheat along with them. I shall wait until harvest time when the wheat is clearly visible against the weeds, and I'll pull up the weeds at that point and burn them. Right? And so that's what she did in that moment. And this is a continuous cycle, a continuous process. And I'll just take my sister. She had a teacher that used to annoy her because he would say process. It's a significant process. But anyways, so she had to do that, and she had to look at her garden and realize that she had some good seed in there of what she wanted that would, like, when your desires align with your success, that's good. So an example of that would be when you want to do your dishes and you need to have your dishes done, that's a union. It's beautiful. Reminds me of a Vince Vaughn movie with Jennifer Aniston. And in this situation, she could kind of represent the subconscious. He's playing a video game, and she comes out and says, honey, the dishes aren't done. And he goes, okay, I'll take care of them in a minute. And she goes, well, and she got kind of frustrated. And then he said, fine, I'll do it now. And he puts down the video game controller. And she goes, honey, it's not that I don't want you to just do the dishes. I want you to want to do the dishes. And he goes, why? And he goes, and I was siding with him at the time. And he goes, why would I want to do dishes? I didn't understand. Right? And I think it's so important to form that relationship and that bond with our subconscious. And we got to face our karma, right? The fire, the garbage that we threw into Gehenna, blowing smoke back on ourselves. That's Gehenna's what represented as hell for a lot of times. But, and we got to face it. And we got to go into our garden. We got to cultivate it. And you can accept the idea that an adversary planted them in there, and that's part of the game of this life. Whatever, it doesn't matter. It's not about guilt or shame, or anything like that. It's about, Jesus said, I didn't come to ask you to sacrifice. And then there was another scripture. He said, I came so that you may live life and live it abundantly. Right? And so you're not cleaning your garden because God's going to hate you, in my opinion, not because God's going to hate you or because you're going to be a better Christian or better anything or God person than anybody else, you do it because you have beliefs, you have desires, potentially, if you're like me, that are in your garden that say that there are things that are valuable that are not. It's like wanting junk food. It's called junk food. It doesn't. I want to share this one. I was gonna say a whole bunch of other stuff, and I just said all this. So maybe I'll just do it this way. I'll say I think I know what to do. So, anyways, you guys can look this up if you want. I'd suggest why not, right? So when big tobacco was getting in trouble, they knew the writing was on the wall, and that the huge amount of money they were making on cigarettes at the time was going to take a dip. This is when everybody was figuring out about cancer, and they had to put on the box and things like that. So right there. So when cigarettes first came out, everybody was people were smoking in the movies and on TV, and the cigarette companies. It was actually a brilliant tactic. It was brainwashing of the masses. It was deliberate product placement, getting celebrities to smoke, advertising. When you watch a movie with a person who plays the role of a hero, you ever see actors get idolized and worshipped because people subconsciously or consciously, sorry about my cat, don't hold on a second. Consciously or subconsciously, they relate to the hero in such a way that they forget that it's just an actor and that this is all pretend. Like subconsciously, there's a lot of emotional things going on, and they bond with the actor as if they're really that hero. Sorry, my cat was meowing. No, I'm just petting her. They bond with that character. So the cigarette companies, like, so they're making, I imagine it was billions back then, even if it wasn't actual billions, which it probably was. Through inflation, all that would have been the equivalent of billions. There was so much money invested into figuring out how to manipulate the masses to want to do something that your body literally resists it. I have never met anybody who smoked the first cigarette and thought it was this amazingly awesome, beautiful, pleasant experience. Their body, a lot of people get sick, nauseous, shaky, and it tastes terrible. It doesn't taste good. The body rejects it outright. But they still smoke. They continue to smoke it. And for many, many people, they become addicted to this thing that their whole body screamed against. And that was the prior brainwashing. You know, that's how in this game, in my opinion, the adversary works. Is the adversary, I've said it in prior episodes, but the adversary lies to you. And a lie only works if you believe it. And you only believe it if it's able to trick you into believing that there's a value. So how do you trick people into smoking this burnt smoke that tastes bad, that makes their body sick in the beginning? It's a subtle brainwashing in the subconscious that it's they call it the bandwagon effect. It's why Michael Jordan would sell shoes, right? Michael Jordan is wearing their shoes, and their mind on a subconscious level doesn't differentiate the fact that wearing those shoes doesn't make you like Michael, even though they had like their thing was like be like Mike, right? But their mind doesn't. It happens so fast they don't even understand what's going on. So it's basically an adversary came in and tricked them. And so the reason that people actually continue to smoke afterwards, even though their body tried to reject it, is because they were already brainwashed before. Or hypnotized, if you want to look at it that way. Hypnotized is probably a better word. They were already hypnotized beforehand. And they want to be like the people that they love. Even though those people that they love are actors and they're not even real. Right? Sorry if this seems kind of choppy. I've been dealing with my cat. So like this is how deep that hypnotism went, right? They idolize these people and they feel this energy towards those characters, those actors, but the actors aren't really the characters, and their mind doesn't even differentiate that. So now you have these people that are acting and being fake and pretending to be characters. There's already a level of hypnosis there where the people are starting to idolize and bond with the actor as if the actor is the character, whether they realize it or not. And then a further compounding of that is a further delusion or understanding that if I smoke these things, I will be like them. And it was subtle, and it was at work the whole time. Do you know that... okay, so we got that. So when the cigarettes, the cigarette companies knew they were... So before that, they had scientists, psychologists, like really smart people working day in and day out, figuring out how to hypnotize the masses. It was all planned, right? And like really, like the chemicals that are in there, the taste, the camels, the cartoons, like all these different things, right? It was brilliant geniuses working together to hypnotize the masses, to get them to believe they want something that's actually bad for them. And that's how the adversary works. And this is why pride is so dangerous, because pride is defending your old belief structure as if you should be defending it. But if you had an adversary plant weeds in your garden, you're defending the weeds and you think you're defending yourself, right? It's crazy. So what happened? And this is, yeah, look this stuff up. It's really cool. Crazy, but cool to learn. So then when that was happening, I should have actually looked this up before I said it because I don't want to get any of the names wrong. So I'll just, instead of going too specific, I'm going to say it roughly, and then you can search it, right? You could Google what companies, what food companies did the tobacco companies buy? And it was like basically the majority of the food, the junk food companies that exist today. They bought them all. And then they took a lot of their scientists and their geniuses that understood human psychology, and they now went to work for doing it with food. And so they put special things in there. It basically tricks your body. So it's like there's like something you can like look up, like if you crave certain junk foods, it's actually your body. It depends. If you've been eating the junk food for a long time, you actually can have an overgrowth of pathogenic organisms that thrive off toxic environments that are basically communicating to your own central nervous system to tell you that they want the junk food because it feeds them, which is also another cause of disease. But another thing that it could also be is a misinterpretation of a signal from your body, where your body has been tricked itself into craving chips, maybe because it needs some minerals, or sodium or something like that, or it might need some healthy fats, right? They did the same thing with margarine, and margarine ended up killing way more people than butter ever did, right? So we have to be on the lookout. Discernment is key, and this is another reason why I'm so big on, understanding the relationship with the pearl and our creator, because if I can do these podcasts and people can hear it and grow in their understanding of their relationship with their creator, that creator was there for you and responding to you, and you are more able to hear it and understand it so that it can just guide you. You can be like, hey, what's going on here? I feel like there's something up. God, my creator, Father, help me out. And depending on where you're at, God may send another person. You might hear a podcast. You might see some random video show up. Even if you didn't voice it out loud, because I think the algorithm is better than the algorithm of social media, right? God trumps that. But you'll get the answers. But so the cigarette companies, so the junk food that everybody's eating, this is what's crazy. It's junk food. Not only is it not providing nutrition for your body, it is hurting you immensely. Your body goes through so much work to try to dispose of that, which is also one of the reasons that I hypothesize, not a doctor, that we may have a lot of, because fat is a lipid cell, and so it's oil. Your body's made of interstitial fluid, and when you have poison in your body and you're overloaded with it, it could make sense that perhaps the body would actually shove toxins into the fat cells, because that fat will act as a barrier from the toxin and the interstitial fluid. Like, your body is basically water. So you don't just need veins for poison to get from one part of your body to the other. It can just get there the same way as if you did a drop of red food coloring into water. This is why a nicotine patch would work. You put it on the skin, right? Why would you be able to put that on the skin and then have it circulate through your whole body and central nervous system through the skin, right? It's through the interstitial or extracellular fluid, the fluid in the body, like the water, right? So anyways, so the game this is mind, body, and spirit, cultivating our gardens. And, to me, I don't think it's possible without developing a connection to the creator, because the creator brings all things new, right? It's very challenging to replace an old value with a new value. Well, number one, it's hard to get it's very hard to get rid of an old value without replacing it with a new value. But it's very hard to replace the old value with a new value without something within yourself that you can trust, that's transcendental to yourself, that can respond to you and provide you with a new understanding. And it can do it internally and externally, but you gotta have discernment internally and externally. And that's why developing a relationship with God is infinitely more important than developing a relationship with a knife. But we understand that even something as small and finite as a knife can kill you if you misunderstand your relationship to it, right? So, oh wow, it's rain. It's pouring outside. I was like, what is that noise? I can hear it going through my microphone. So I'm going to go to another parable from the Bible. This is paraphrase, but there was a man who had an evil spirit in his house, and he kicked the spirit out. Think of that as like a bad habit or a bad value, right? And he kicked it out. But he left the house empty and orderly, but he left it empty. The evil spirit wandered in the desert for a while and then realized it wanted to go back to the home. So it went back to the home, but this time it brought 7 spirits even more evil than itself so that the condition of the man was worse than he had started with. What's the moral of that? That it's very difficult to kick out a bad spirit, a bad value, a parasitic value, a destructive value, without replacing it. And that's what people try to do all the time. They're trying to kill a bad habit. Just replace it with a good habit. Because the thing that's tricked is your subconscious, and your subconscious is trying to do right by you. It's just been bamboozled. So when my sister said it's hard to let go, it's because she has a value that she accepted and conformed to from the world or from the old age. That, and another thing about the value is when the value speaks to you, it's going to speak to you in your own voice, which makes it compounds how challenging it is. Right? And vigilance is important, all that stuff, right? So, so for her to let go of it, she needed to tap into her creator. Now, you can do it internally. You can also do it externally. The creator will meet you where you're at. It's hard because, in my understanding, the creator speaks to me in my own voice. The Holy Spirit, Spirit of Truth, Father, right? To me, it's just goodness that loves me, and it participates as being my source of being and my creator. The same way as an author who writes a lot of new books, fantasy books even, right, that don't exist before he writes them. He trusts his source that he gets his material from. He has a loving relationship with his source, and so the words flow through him. They must, and they're given to him, given and received. He's an author. He knows what he knows. How is he going to create something that doesn't exist if he isn't able to tap into a source? How is he going to tap into a source if he doesn't recognize that source exists? How is he going to channel in that source effectively without having a proper relationship with it? Like with a knife. Right? So, we'll go to these questions. I was going to say a whole bunch about the scripture on something else, but I guess I can just kind of dive into those later, or maybe I'll just go for a little bit longer here. Why are we... So I would say this. So we've been talking about values and corrupt values, deceitful desires, right? Tares, weeds that look like wheat. And, to let something go, it needs to be replaced with something better. One of the best ways to replace it with something better is to recognize your divinity and your connection to your creator source, that God is not outside of you. I mean, God is outside and inside of you, but like that you're going to find it within your soul. You can find it. And you find it by asking. Seek and ye shall find, ask and the answer will be given, knock on the door will be open. So I think what I really want to frame here is with those questions, why do we read anything? I don't know. Some people read for entertainment. Me personally, a lot of the reading or consuming that I do, if I'm not just relaxing or something like that, or just interested in seeing a story, usually when I'm reading things, especially scripture, I'm reading them to learn and find truth. And the reason I like the Bible is because to me the Bible is a bunch of stories, and the whole focus is on mankind's relationship with their source of being. And so through each of the stories, I can find the moral of the story, kind of like an Aesop fable. Because not everybody in the Bible, in fact, most people in the Bible, were not just these righteous superheroes. They were did some really terrible things. Terrible things. David had the husband of the wife he wanted because he saw her bathing in the sun, and he had the husband killed. There was Moses. Moses was a murderer who was sent into exile and found God there. Paul was a Christian murderer. Right? And so you learn. Solomon wrote some really wise things. Never once said you should love God. He did say you should trust God and fear God. And then he wrote it's been attributed to him Ecclesiastes. And Ecclesiastes to me sounds like a dude who kind of reached near the end of his life, had succeeded a lot, and was missing something. And he said everything is vanity. Everything is vanity. He sounded like he was lamenting. Lamenting, and so you can learn from that. The same way as just hearing a bunch of stories about people using the knife. Watching YouTube's videos of people using the knife to get a better understanding of it. That to me is how I seek to use the Bible to learn and to grow and to understand my relationship to the divine. And so I'm gonna. And then I asked the question, was the purpose to worship a figure from the past or to awaken the divine goodness already living within you? And so I like the analogy of to me, Jesus was kind of like an early riser. Like we're all caterpillars with the potential to become butterflies. When we recognize something about our union with God, I'm still working through it, right? And it would be like if the butterfly came and he's like, "Hey guys, look, I went into a cocoon. I went into the desert and fasted for 40 days, right? Into the wilderness and fasted for 40 days. I went into a cocoon and something happened. And now look at me. I got wings. And you guys are caterpillars just like me. And I wanted to share this information. If you follow these steps, you can be like me." And there's a scripture that he says it. "Verily, verily, I say unto thee, all of these things that I have been doing, and even greater things than these, shall you do." Right? So I had an intention I was going to be reading a lot more of the scriptures, but so I want to leave it with that. So the way that I am approaching this is that I'm looking at the Bible to get a greater understanding of my relationship to my source of being, both through other people's follies and missteps and trials, as well as other people's successes, the same way I would with anything else that I want to learn about in life, but with an understanding that my relationship with my source of being is like that shiny pearl. You know, if when I have that, you know, Jesus said, which one is this one? He said, there was more to it, but I'm only remembering a piece of it. "Seek ye first the kingdom, and all of these things will be delivered unto you." So I'm seeking the pearl first, not because I think that I need to walk around in this world and be broke, sick, and destitute, because I don't. He came to bring life more abundant, right? It's just that I understand that to live that abundant life will work from the inside out. And so I find that understanding, and God takes care of it. And that's how how far along am I on this? I don't know. I have no idea. You know, I used a scripture last week that I love. It's the Epistles of John, not the Gospel of John. It's something different. And it's, "Beloved, now we are the sons of God. And though it doth not yet appear what we shall be, we know that when he appears, we shall be like him. For then we shall see him as he is." And then it just fell out of my head. "Then we shall see him as he is." Anyways, "Beloved, for now we are the sons of God, and though it doth not yet appear what we shall be, we know that when he appears, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is." I think that's it. I think that's the part of it. So this is what I'm bringing forth here is exploration in the concept that he's a butterfly. He didn't come for us to worship the physical expression that he did. He was supposed to show the way, the truth, and the life for us to emulate. That's my thoughts on it. And so for now, we're going to be diving into scripture to see if we can find those that support that. So let's. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read a number of scriptures to close this out. For probably I'm just going to read them. I'll name the numbers and I'll read them. I've already shared what my thoughts are in the direction that I'm heading in here, and that Jesus was the butterfly that came to tell us other caterpillars how to become butterflies. He also said, "Those who say to me, Lord, Lord, will not reach the kingdom. Only those who do the will of my Father who is in heaven." So right there, he's saying, like, it's almost like he's like saying, "Hey, just don't just call out my name. That doesn't mean anything. Know what I'm saying, because when you know what I know, you will do the will of my Father, because what the will of my Father does is good, holy, and beautiful. By their fruits you shall know them." But you can't do it until you know it, right? And so that's why I asked the question earlier, like, why are you reading this? Know why you're doing it. Set your intention and your value, and that will replace. It's like if you think of air as sin, and for the sake of this analogy, and water as spirit and love and abundance. And God gave you a cup of water, and it had a certain amount of water in it. Maybe it wasn't completely full, but it had a decent amount when you're little. And then the world tells you a bunch of things about you being an animal and a monkey and all these things, or God's outside of you, or God is angry at you or something. And so you slowly poured out the water over time. And as you poured out the water, the air, nature hates a vacuum, the air will rush in and fill in the space of where the water you poured out was. And so people are always trying to remove a bad value by pulling the air out. You can't. It just rushes right back in,
because there's room in there for the air, for the negative energy. So the best way to get the air out, instead of trying to pull the air out of the cup, is to fill it with water, fill it with truth, fill it with life. And what better truth to set you free than you are children of the Father? And God is literally, it's where your treasure is, your heart will be also. All right, so I've said my piece, right? Now, let's hear some scriptures that could potentially support this. And there's so many of them. I'm just going to read them. Just going to read them. Let's see how long I go for. There's a lot of them. I'm going to read them, and then we'll end it. And you can, look them up if you want, paste them somewhere, or just let the words speak to you and see what you think. Did the Christ come for people to worship the man he was? Or did he come to help you unleash the man or woman, right? Divine man or woman that you are inside, and free that part of you. All right, so 2 Peter 1, chapter 1, verse 3. His divine power has given us everything we need for a godly life through our knowledge of him who called us by his own glory and goodness. Through these he has given us his very great and precious promises, so that through them you may participate in the divine nature, having escaped the corruption in the world caused by evil desires or values, right? That sounds a lot like what we were talking about here so far, right? Psalm 82:6. I said, you are gods, you are all sons of the Most High. That was also referenced and cited by Jesus in John chapter 10, verse 34. John chapter 17, verse 20. My prayer is not for them alone. I pray also for those who believe in me through their message, that all of them may be one. Father, just as you are in me and I am in you, may they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. I have given them the glory that you gave me, that they may be one as we are one, I in them and you in me, so that they may be brought to complete unity. Unity with what? Inside of yourself, the Trinity, right? You're the Trinity. Romans chapter 8, verse 14. For those who are led by the Spirit of God are the children of God. The Spirit you received does not make you slaves, so that you live in fear again. Rather, the Spirit you received brought about your adoption to sonship. And by him we cry, Abba, Father. The Spirit himself testifies with our spirit that we are God's children. Now, if we are children, then we are heirs, heirs of God and co-heirs with Christ, if indeed we share in his sufferings, in order that we may share in his glory. Ephesians chapter 1, verse 4. For he chose us in him before the creation of the world to be holy and blameless in his sight. In love, he predestined us for adoption to sonship through Jesus Christ, God saves, in accordance with his pleasure and will. Galatians chapter 4, verse 4. But when the set time had fully come, God sent his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those under the law, that we might receive adoption to sonship. Because you are his sons, God sent the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, the Spirit who calls out, Abba, Father. So you are no longer a slave, but God's child, and since you are his child, God has made you also an heir. 1 John chapter 3, verse 1. See what great love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God. And that is what we are. The reason the world does not know us is that it did not know him. Dear friends, now we are children of God, and what we will be has not yet been made known, but we know that when Christ appears, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. 2 Corinthians 3:18. And we all, who with unveiled faces contemplate the Lord's glory, are being transformed into his image with ever increasing glory, which comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. Colossians chapter 3, verse 10. And have put on the new self, which is being renewed in knowledge in the image of its Creator. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 22. You were taught with regard to your former way of life to put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, to be made new in the attitude of your minds, and to put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. Matthew chapter 5, verse 48. Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. John chapter 1, verse 12. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision, or a husband's will, but born of God. Romans 12:2. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 49. And just as we have been born the image of the earthly man, so shall we bear the image of the heavenly man. Acts chapter 17, verse 28. For in him we live and move and have our being. As some of your own poets have said, we are his offspring. Therefore, since we are God's offspring, we should not think that the divine being is like gold or silver or stone, an image made by human design and skill. John chapter 15, verse 4. Remain in me, as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine. You are the branches. If you remain in me, and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. John chapter 4, verse 16. And so we know and rely on the love God has for us. God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God, and God in them. This is how love is made complete among us, so that we will have confidence on the day of judgment. In this world, we are like Jesus, Yeshua. Colossians chapter 1, verse 27. To them God has chosen to make known among the Gentiles the glorious riches of this mystery, which is Christ in you, the hope of glory. (1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 19). Do you know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own, you were bought at a price.
Therefore, honor God with your bodies. See you next time.